Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are waking up and feeling good out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day. And I hope everyone's been having a great week out there so far. We got a lot to talk about in this morning's video as severe weather will be returning. In fact, we're going to get some severe weather for today, later on this afternoon to this evening, but we'll talk more on that towards the back half of the video when we talk about today's weather. What we're going to do first is focus in on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday severe weather threat, especially Friday and Saturday's risk, as I do think they'll be the highest risk days. So we're going to speak on this. The first thing we'll talk about is the latest stuff from the Storm Prediction Center, their latest outlook, and explain what it means. And then we'll talk about the storm system itself, the ingredients coming together to create this risk of severe weather. We'll speak on the winter weather side of the storm system, because I do think there'll be a blizzard for certain areas of the Dakotas, maybe even Minnesota. If not a blizzard, we're at least going to get a swath of accumulating snow. We'll speak on the winds on this storm system, as I think we'll have non-severe thunderstorm damaging winds across the southern high plains. And I'll talk about what that means when we get to that. And we'll speak a little bit about the flooding portion of this storm system, which might not be talked about as much right now, but could materialize into a bigger storyline as we get closer to this event. And then we'll break down today's forecast. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put it in the comments below. Still fighting a little bit of a sore throat, and just my voice keeps popping, stuff like that. So I thought we were past it yesterday. It's kind of came back, and I think what's going on is if I'm not up for a few hours before making this video, then that's when I struggle the most. When I kind of wake up early, work out, do my morning stuff, and then I do the video already up for a few hours, then it's like my voice kind of recovers. But I slept in this morning. Wednesday mornings is kind of a morning where I don't do my normal morning stuff. So struggling a little bit again this morning, but we're going to make it through this and fight our way through. So let me stop all my yapping and let's start talking about the weather. So we do have an enhanced risk. We're at day 3 now, so this is for Friday. Okay, level 3 out of 5 risk of severe weather. So in this orange risk, this means we have an enhanced risk. This includes everybody you see. I mean, St. Louis, includes down to Memphis, Poplar Bluff, Jonesboro, down to Tupelo, Starkville, almost all the way down to Birmingham. It does include Tuscaloosa, and kind of right up to Nashville. Includes all, not all, but a good chunk of western Kentucky, small section of western and southwestern Indiana, like Evansville, and gets all the way up to Davenport, guys. I mean, we have an enhanced risk even for a very small section of southeast Iowa. So, I mean, just about the entire eastern half of Missouri has an enhanced risk. Now, if we make this a little bit larger, a slight risk extends all the way to just north of Rochester, Minnesota, back over to Madison, through Chicago, through Indianapolis, through Louisville, all the way through portions of Nashville, all the way down to Birmingham, all the way down to Meridian, almost down to Hattiesburg, Jackson, Mississippi, through Little Rock. You guys have a slight risk. I think you had an enhanced risk yesterday, so they've kind of positioned this a little bit further to the east, it looks like. But slight risk does go all the way up through Des Moines, which is in the yellow, and then the dark green is a marginal risk. Now, we're still at day 3. They have kind of they're showing us more of a percentage now, but they still have not sectioned out whether it's tornadoes, damaging winds, hail. It's going to be all of them, but what's going to be the highest risk? What we do know here is if you look at this, in this red area, there's a 30% chance of any severe weather. That could be tornadoes, damaging winds, large hail. But there is also a 10% risk of any significant severe weather. So that could be a strong EF2 tornado, hail exceeding 2 inches or larger, or damaging winds in excess of hurricane force category 1 winds. And that's like pushing 70 to 75, 80 mile per hour wind gusts. Okay. In the yellow area, that means there's a 15% risk of any severe weather. Okay. And I'll kind of look down here, then look back up here. Now, there is what we call a hatched risk, which is the black outline region with the black dashes going in between it. There is also, in portions of that 15% risk area, it can get a little bit confusing, a 10% risk of any significant severe weather in this also. Same thing. Okay, 10% risk, 10% risk. It's always going to be a 10% risk when it comes to significant severe weather. Okay, the thing that changes is just severe weather in general. So 30% chance of any severe weather, 10% risk that that severe weather could be significant. Same thing with the yellow, except there's a 15% risk of any severe weather, 10% risk that it could be any significant severe weather. So sometimes I can explain things a little too much and it gets a little bit more confusing, but this is going to be a big day of severe weather as we get into Friday. So now we look at, I want to look at a little discussion here. Okay. So let me go on and zoom into this area right here. And then I want to read, I want us to read this. So it says a more conditional risk for overnight supercells exists across parts of northern central Mississippi, Alabama. The environment could support intense supercells capable of producing large hail and strong tornadoes this far south, but forcing mechanisms would be weak. Trends will be monitored and future outlook adjustments may be needed. And what they mean by forcing mechanisms is because, and we'll speak on this here in a second, the low pressure that's causing the majority of this severe weather is going to be way up here probably. Okay, so the further away that the low pressure gets, even though you got the ingredients for severe weather down here, you might not have that forcing in the atmosphere to really get these storms going. So it is talking about this area right down here that later Friday night, I would watch for future, it says watch for future adjustments. Okay, so there could be supercells late at night in this area Friday night. So I just want to kind of, mention that. I found that interesting in the discussion while reading it this morning. Now, for Saturday, I continue to think that this could be a very dangerous day. I mean, maybe even more dangerous than Friday. All right, we're still at day 4, so it's still showing these outlooks. All we know in this orange area is that there is a 30% chance of any severe weather, damaging winds, large hail, or tornadoes. Okay, and that includes everybody in the orange, from Chattanooga down to Atlanta, Birmingham, Montgomery, down to the western areas of the Panhandle, Florida, Mobile, New Orleans, Gulfport, Baton Rouge, Jackson, Meridian. Enhanced risk. We make this larger. A slight risk extends all the way up to Cleveland, almost to Erie, almost the entire state of Ohio, western PA, good chunk of West Virginia, all the way through Lexington, Louisville, Cincinnati. It looks like almost the entire state of Kentucky. The entire state of Tennessee, you might as well say, except this little small area right here, has some sort of risk of severe weather, whether it's 15, 30. Once you start to get into southern and southeastern areas of Tennessee, you start to get into that 30% risk area. The slight risk does extend all the way into western areas of Virginia. This means we have a 15% risk of any severe weather. Chops the Carolinas in half, okay? This goes all the way through central areas of Georgia, all the way down to the Interstate 10 corridor here in the central panhandle of Florida. So that means there's a 15% risk of any severe weather. I do think this is going to be a big area Saturday, and I think there could be really strong to severe thunderstorms capable of producing all hazards already ongoing Saturday morning in this area right here. Okay, and then we got day 5. There hasn't really been any adjustments with this. Slight risk extends all the way up from Scranton, PA. Doesn't quite get into New York City, but includes a good chunk of New Jersey here, through DC, through Baltimore, okay, through Richmond, Roanoke, almost the entire state of Virginia. Still sections of eastern West Virginia. Includes most of the Carolinas except maybe the far western areas. Okay, so Raleigh, Greensboro, Charlotte, Columbia, Florence, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington. And includes the rest of southeast Georgia into northern areas of Florida. And same thing, just means there's a 15% risk of any severe weather. So I'll broaden that out, let you look at it. It's a pretty large area. So let me get some water here. Let's explain what this system kind of looks like. And of course, this is just a model run. This is just a Euro. All right, we got a 980 low. I want you to look at this low pressure right here. That is the beginning stages of our storm system. This is Friday morning. As we're getting into about Friday afternoon, all right, we're starting to get some stuff, if you will, popping off right into here. And you can barely see it kind of on the southern areas of this circle I just drew. But we're starting to get rapid thunderstorm development right in here in response to a low pressure deepening and building in a lot of low level moisture. And also, because the low pressure itself is strengthening and just a strong low pressure, this is bringing in a lot of wind energy, kinematics, fancy word for just wind energy. Okay, now watch as I keep this going into, late Friday afternoon, Friday evening, Friday night. You're going to see this nasty line of storms right here develop across areas of eastern Iowa, Missouri, even southern areas of Minnesota. And this line of storms, because it's really close to that low, this is going to probably produce severe wind gusts. But I want you to kind of look down here. You kind of see some areas popping up down here. These could be supercells. And I know it doesn't look that impressive like when you're looking at this video, but we're just not in short range model guidance and reliable short range model guidance. I don't ever like looking at the NAM and the long range. But you continue, and we start to get into, this is the middle of the night. I mean, this is like midnight, 1 a.m. 977 low, powerful low pressure, whipping up a lot of wind energy. And we got this kind of bowing line of storms rumbling through areas of the Midwest, stretching probably all the way to Louisiana, even though you don't see much. Going across this region, blasting across areas of Illinois into Indiana, western Kentucky, western Tennessee, through Chicago, even areas of southern Wisconsin. This line of storms I just drew, this will probably be producing damaging wind gusts, even embedded tornadoes, especially on the southern end where you have better moisture. I'll speak on that here in a second. So this will be a nasty line of storms, guys. I mean, this will be in the middle of the night too. So let's keep going. We get into Saturday morning. And I'll back it up a little bit here. I'm gonna look at about 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning, before the sun even comes up. We need to watch this area down here. Okay, and this is in the wee hours of the morning, Saturday morning, like I said, before the sun even comes up. There's not going to be too low pressures. I don't know what's up with that. But we're already going to have this maybe weakening line of storms through here. But this more south circle I drew right here, even though you're just seeing blobs of green, orange, and red, these could be severe storms capable of producing all hazards. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center just discussed it. If you missed that part of the video, I showed you a little clip from the discussion for the Storm Prediction Center, and they mentioned the fact that we could have an environment down here that supports supercells, during the nighttime hours. All right, so we keep going here. Maybe a weakening line of storms moving into Ohio, but it could very well be strong. And then check this out. This is 15Z Saturday. So this is like 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning in the Deep South. Look at all these storms already ongoing. There already can be just a parade of strong to severe storms capable of producing all hazards Saturday morning before even lunchtime in this area. Okay. Now, the big question to me is, how does that impact any kind of convection or storm fuel later in the afternoon? So we start to get into Saturday afternoon. There still just looks to be a ton of energy down here in the Deep South, Mid-South, across Alabama, Mississippi. Heavy rain too. We can't just ignore that. Gusty winds all the way up into Tennessee, Kentucky. And what's going on is another kind of short wave or piece of energy is kind of rumbling through here as a trough digs down right through here. And this low will eject across probably the Ohio Valley, Kentucky, something like that. So we keep this going, and we start to get into Saturday evening, and we're probably going to have another line of storms going through Indiana. This might be line number 2 or heck, even 3. So this is Saturday evening. This is like 10, 11 o'clock at night. So not too late, but man, we got a lot of severe weather ongoing across a very large area, guys. We probably have supercells and just, we don't know the storm mode. Storm mode meaning, is this going to be a line of storms? Damaging wind kind of threat driven, a mixture of both supercells and a line of storms. We're still trying to figure that one out, but there's going to be plenty of forcing for thunderstorms down here in the Deep South with a kind of a shortwave low really close to this area. And these storms will start to move into Atlanta. Okay. The rest of Georgia as we're getting into the overnight hours to the middle of the night, Saturday night. And then we start to get into Sunday morning, and what's going on at this point? There's the low that kind of pops up on our screen. It's all the way up here on Lake Huron by Sunday morning, so it's racing quick up through the eastern U.S. We have an ongoing line of storms, and then, storms could develop again. I mean, as far north as New York, I would not be surprised if a severe weather threat's all the way into central New York by the time we get into Sunday. But we have a pretty large area that probably has enough ingredients for severe weather up through this area right here. So, we keep going, and do we have like another low that kind of pops off right here? Kind of Sunday? I think it's possible, and in fact, it shows it. There's another low pressure right here, and it takes all the way to about Tuesday morning before all the moisture really just clears. So, spent a lot of time on that, and we're going to start to spend less time on the ingredients just because we're getting closer now. But what's driving this is a trough digging down, and with this trough digging down, it's going to bring a lot of wind energy. So already, Friday morning, we have this over 120 knots, 500 millibar jet, and this means that the winds are going over 120 knots based off this run on the Euro, and it's probably going to be this high. Not at the surface, but about 18,000 feet up in the air. So we call this the mid-level jet here, mid-level jet streak rumbling through here. So this does mix stronger winds to the surface, but I want you to mainly focus on the fact that it's a lot of wind energy with this storm system. So we start to get into Friday afternoon. This trough starts to take on more of kind of a negative tilt like this. Okay, and in response, a low pressure begins to, well, it's already developed at this point because the trough has already took on a neutral and it's already tilting negative. So we have a strengthening storm system, so low in response is ejecting off this trough. This is creating a lot of wind energy right through here. Okay, so we have this wind energy just popping off right here, fueling all the ingredients needed for, damaging winds. Tornadoes also, but we look at our low-level jet for that. Not only our low-level jet, but all this wind energy continues. This will be driving. You see this little area right here. Up mid-level jet still going at over 100 knots. This will be driving a line of storms capable of producing severe wind gusts across the Midwest. That could weaken a little bit, and then we watch our secondary push right here Saturday as another low develops right in here, and a lot of wind energy in the upper levels of the atmosphere screams over the deep south. And then I think as we get into Sunday morning, this jet streak begins to really increase again, and by the time we get into Sunday afternoon, we could have a big windstorm across areas of the eastern seaboard. We have to see with that. We're still trying to figure out Sunday, but I definitely think that we're going to have a wind-driven severe weather threat for Sunday. But we're not going to we can't rule out tornadoes either. But looking at that low-level jet and the low levels, see in these levels, if you back it up and look at this, if you look at these wind barbs right into here, see how the flag is pointing this way? Let's draw on this a little bit. The flag is pointing this way. That means the winds are coming out of that way. So winds are coming out of here. So winds are coming in the upper levels of the atmosphere, 18,000 feet up, out the southwest. Now you look at the low levels, the low-level jet. These are winds at 850 millibars, about 6,000 feet up in the air, a mile above your head at the surface. And you look right here, they're kind of coming more out the south. So winds in the lower levels kind of coming more out the south. To get a little bit higher up, it begins to shift to come out the southwest. There's a little bit of turning, directional shear. We're going to have the risk of not just damaging winds, but tornadoes. So we get into Friday, we got this low-level jet ramping at, who knows, 50, 60, 65 knots across areas of the Mississippi Valley up into the Midwest, areas of the Deep South, the Mississippi Delta area. And then this is why I'm really concerned about a line of storms capable of producing very strong winds across the Mid-South. The low-level jet will be very strong through this area in response to a surface low right here. So in the low levels of the atmosphere, the low-level jet screaming at almost over 70 knots. So this will be driving a damaging wind threat and a nasty line of storms, I think, across the Midwest, probably Friday night and a Saturday morning. Now, as this heads on off, we're going to have that secondary energy that really develops. So this is Saturday afternoon. Another surface low or feature develops right into here. This will pull up its own low-level jet, just like the main powerful storm system up here did. and we're going to have winds just screaming out the south at interstate speed or higher, like 75, 80, 85 miles per hour. Tons of low-level wind energy through this area. This low-level jet will start to move over the backside, the western side of the Appalachian Mountains into the Ohio Valley, and there could be a significant wind event going across these areas, like, Kentucky, eastern Tennessee, up into the mountains of all the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, really. And this will be driving the severe weather threat, but also this will mix to the surface in the form of some powerful wind gusts. And then we start to get into Sunday, and we could have a big wind event Sunday afternoon across New England and even areas in the mid-Atlantic. And I know this is in the upper levels of the atmosphere, but you got to think this is going over some higher elevation. So your low-level jet is at the surface in higher elevation, because if you live at 3,000-4,000 feet up in the air, then you're extending into that low-level jet somewhere, at least the southern edge of it. So, and all that wind energy is going to yank up a lot of low-level moisture. So already Friday midday, we got dew points in the 60s. Now, dew points aren't very high. And Storm Prediction Center discussion mentions this. Aren't very high up here in like the Midwest. But you have what we call cold air aloft. This creates lapse rates, which means that it basically, with the cold air aloft, with enough kinetic energy, the lapse rates are there, and they actually increase the CAPE levels. That cold air aloft and dry air aloft meaning in the upper levels of the atmosphere, actually creates storm fuel, kind of the differences in temperature. So your temperatures will actually be pretty warm up here at the surface Friday, like 70s and 80s. But we keep this going, and as we're getting into Friday evening, dew points really begin to rise, and we get this deep pool of Gulf moisture that really rises into the western and central deep south. And then as we're getting into Saturday, and when we have tons of moisture, when you get dew points in the 60s, it's very humid. It's very juicy outside. You can really feel the humidity. And then we start to get into Saturday afternoon. This slither of higher moisture gets all the way up into Indiana, Ohio. And then it begins to, move over areas of the southeast overnight Saturday into Sunday. And we even get a spike of moisture all the way for the eastern seaboard as we get into Sunday afternoon across the eastern states. Dew points rise all the way into the 60s, all the way up into PA. So last thing we look at, and I don't focus too much on the CAPE levels until we get a little bit closer, but there's that spike in CAPE in response to those better lapse rates up here. Colder, drier air aloft, differences in temperatures in the atmosphere create storm energy. So if I put my cursor over here, we have over 1,000 joules per kilogram in storm fuel. So I just think we're going to get severe weather up here too. But your better thermodynamic energy is down here. It's kind of sectioned off into two different areas. But you keep going here, and we get into Saturday morning. The crazy thing is this is like in the wee hours of the morning before the sun even comes up Saturday morning. And we're sitting down here with rocket fuel, CAPE storm energy, over 2,500 joules per kilogram in the Mississippi, Louisiana area. This is why they discuss the possibility of supercells, people producing strong tornadoes and large hail because of all this storm fuel down here. Early. And the big question is all that morning convection going to kind of keep CAPE levels down, storm energy down across the rest of the deep south? We got this little pocket of storm fuel up here in Ohio. I think that's worth monitoring. And then we start to get into Sunday, and, we're probably going to get a spike in storm energy. It's not very high, but I think that this could trend higher. But we got that over 500 joules per kilogram in a highly favored kinetic wind energy atmosphere. We'll get the job done for severe weather for sure. So I will mention the snow side of this. Let me make sure I got enough time here, running a little low. This is Friday morning. All right, not a whole lot going on. Storm system will move in. A lot of these areas will start out as rain. And then we start to get into Friday night. And this is where, as we're getting into Saturday morning, 978 low. Strong low pressure over north central Minnesota. You guys could switch to a period of very heavy snow in the eastern Dakotas all the way down here into northeastern Nebraska, and maybe a wintry mix. But I would venture to say this is probably going to be snow and in western Minnesota, and we could just have a quick hitting winter storm. And by the time we start to get into Saturday midday, heavy snow is beginning to really fall and central to western Minnesota. Could even switch to snow in Minneapolis. And then by the time we're into Saturday evening, International Falls getting some heavy snow, but then this heads on out. Okay? Now, the concerning thing about this is if we get to the period where it really starts to snow, it's just really Saturday morning. So we compare this is Saturday morning, with what it's showing as far as snowfall. All right, so it's snowing like crazy right here in this area, right? We compare it to the predicted wind gust in this time period based off the Euro. And guys, we have a strong low pressure right here, and we have 30, 40, 50 mile per hour wind gusts ongoing where the snow is falling. So we're going to get blizzard conditions in this area. And we continue to move forward here. And I mean, this takes us to about Saturday afternoon, and you kind of back this up to Saturday afternoon. This is a blizzard ongoing in Minnesota. So I still think we're going to get blizzard conditions, guys. So, be aware of that. But as far as how much snow, I don't think it's going to be a massive snow event as far as how much snow falls. But this is the Euro blend here, the Euro ensemble, and does take that swath of 2 to as much as 5 inches of snow in this area. And most model guidance is really starting to really zone into this area as far as accumulating snow. So if you're tuning in from this area, say hi. But you could get a blizzard, but it could be a sharp cutoff in the blizzard. And look at the GFS ensemble in this area. It kind of, shows the same area, guys. Not much different. So I do want to mention this. Listen, this will be kind of a storyline that's not talked about as much. But if you live in western Texas, areas of New Mexico, even up into eastern Colorado, areas of Kansas, you're going to have severe wind gusts come Friday. I mean, starting as early as Friday morning. This is the predicted wind gusts between now and Friday evening from the National Weather Service. Folks, they're going for over 70 mile per hour wind gusts in certain areas here. But widespread 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts, even in western Oklahoma. This is due because you have a negative tilted trough, a low pressure developing in response, and this is going to kick up a stout westerly southwesterly flow over this area. And at the surface, this is going to be extremely strong winds. And the reason it's so strong out here, guys, is because you got to think, the further out west you get, even though you're not really seeing mountains in some certain areas, you're starting to gain elevation. I mean, certain areas out in this region are higher than the actual mountains here in the Appalachian Mountains, okay? But you're just on a plateau. So you're extending a little bit higher up in the atmosphere. So the higher up you get, the more you start to kind of ooze into that stronger wind field. So it makes sense that you're getting these strong wind gusts. So please be aware if you live in this area. This is going to be a fire danger too, because it's going to be very dry. And there could be a flooding threat that materializes. Just the blend of all models. It highlights this area, the mid to deep south, all the way up to the Ohio Valley. 2, 3, maybe as much as 4 inches of rain could fall as we have rounds of thunderstorms that can move over the same areas. And it could be quite rainy up here in the Northeast too. So today's weather, we got the energy moving into the western U.S. This is our little short wave right here scooting across New Mexico and Arizona right now. This is going to get and generate some severe thunderstorms across areas of the south central U.S. Looks like we got a little energy going over the Great Lakes region. Not sure what all is hitting the ground up here with this, but this is what's going on right now. Watches, warnings, advisories, special weather statements. This is due to a fire danger, so, don't burn anything. We got numerous winter weather alerts out west, winter storm watches across the mountains of Utah, winter weather advisories in the purple, winter storm warnings in the pink. So this is just because rounds of moisture are moving over this area, basically. So higher elevations will get snow off of it. Now, another look at the watches warnings, because it never shows winds on weather-wise, and hopefully we can get that fixed there. But red flag warnings, it is very dry, so these winds are not going to help. We have an extreme fire risk today in certain areas. So the hot pink color, that's red flag warnings. We got high wind watches, high wind warnings in these areas, a lot going on. And speaking of that fire danger, here it is, extreme. In areas of purple and that hatch risk right here. This is where there is a high chance where at least you don't want to drag no chains. You don't know definitely don't throw no cigarette butts out the window. Just be smart, guys. Be courteous, be respectful. And then the severe weather threat here, guys. I mean, I know this is a kind of a small area, really covering the Texarkana area, the Arklatex, But basically, right here where Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas come together, we're going to get some powerful thunderstorms in this area today. Capable of producing very large hail from Dallas. I mean, just because you live in the dark green too doesn't mean you're exempt from any thunderstorms, but there's going to be some strong thunderstorms in this area today. Tornado risk right now only a 2% risk, but I could see this bumping up to a 5% risk. But Mary, I know you live in this area. You need to be aware of these storms. She's a longtime viewer. But the wind threat, there is a 15% risk of damaging winds, 55 to 60 miles per hour. Hail threat, though. 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger, but there is also a 10% risk of significant hail, which is hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. So the dynamics in this setup today support very large hail. So moving forward, though, there's not really a big time risk of excessive flooding today or anything like that. But I'm going to hyper focus on that area here in a second. But the southeast, beautiful weather getting into this evening. You see the storms firing. We're going to talk about this in the South Central timestamp. But some of that energy will eventually make it into Mississippi and even Alabama. And we're going to have a risk of strong to severe storms across the deep south even tomorrow across these areas. But today's weather's nice. Northeast kind of the same. Not a real whole lot to talk about. We are going to get a little moisture that develops here in the southern tier. Maybe the Catskills gets maybe a little rain-snow mix. And, I mean, we could even get some snow that develops across the southern New England area, maybe a stripe of snow, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal, but it might surprise some people. We're getting into mid-March. You don't see it as much anymore. And then we look at the south central U.S., and this is where we have to watch for those thunderstorms. There they are exploding across this region right here, and we're going to zoom into this region here in a second, and then it heads on out. But here's a closer look at these storms, and there isn't a great geographical area I can really show for this area. So I pulled up the state of Arkansas, and it does show the threat area pretty well. But this is around 6, 7 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Look how these storms look quite severe. They look very significant. Some of them are discrete. The wind energy needed for tornadoes today really isn't there as far as the directional element needed for a spin in the atmosphere for tornadoes. But listen, I wouldn't be surprised we get a couple tornado warnings today. But a large hail is definitely the biggest threat. These storms will move over the Arklatex region and just this entire area, like I said, right where Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, and Oklahoma meet. And these storms will be packing a punch. This is around 8, 9, 10 p.m. tonight. Sun is starting to set, and you're going to get a lightning show out here. And these storms will start to lose some steam somewhat as they move fully into Louisiana and Arkansas, but still packing a punch. And I think by the time they make it all the way to like Jackson in the wee hours of the morning tomorrow morning, they really lose some steam. But if you look at the updraft velocity swath, it's probably going to be pretty loud. Typically is when you have, and just remember, normally this is a great indicator of large hail too, because when you have stronger updrafts, you have a higher risk of hail. But we're going to have some large hail. Please, if you live in this region, you're tuning in, say hi. But if there's a way, basically you want to know where these storms are when they're coming. But if there's a way to protect things that could get damaged by hail, I would definitely try to do whatever you can. But there will be a tornado risk with this today and gusty winds. But like I said, damaging winds probably the biggest threat. Some snow flying around up here in the UP of Michigan. Once we get into this evening, it's the overnight hours all the way into tomorrow morning. Maybe a little energy up here in northern Minnesota, but it's a pretty quiet weather day. Out west, pretty quiet. I'm sorry, not quiet. I'm so used to saying that sometimes. But out west, we do have a lot of energy moving into the western states. Higher elevation snow, Sierra Nevada, Cascades will get snow. But this is just a lot of rain moving into California, maybe even some thunderstorms moving into the coastal areas of southern Cal. But snow will be heavy and plentiful in the Sierra Nevada. All this energy will begin to move into the Rockies as we get into tomorrow. But temperatures, very warm day across the southern tier of the entire country. I mean, warm all the way up to the Midwest. Hanging on to some chillier temperatures across the Northeast. It is always hard to shake winter in the Northeast. It lingers around for a very long time. But man, areas of southern Texas could hit 100 degrees. I wouldn't be surprised we hear that someone deep down in Texas hits 100. But these are the temperatures out west. So that's all I got. Thank y'all for tuning in. Bear with me with my voice. God bless all y'all, and I'll talk to you again soon.